Historically, during the latter years of the Second World War, the German Wehrmacht found itself locked in an unsustainable battle of industrial attrition against the combined colossal manufacturing power of the Soviet Union and the United States. While Adolf Hitler remained stubbornly obsessed with the design and production of over-engineered, resource-intensive heavy tanks like the Tiger and the Panther, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel recognized a fatal flaw in this philosophy. Discussing defensive strategy with his former chief of staff, Fritz Bayerlein, Rommel famously remarked that Germany could never hope to keep pace with the enemy in the production of tanks, but could certainly do so in the mass production of anti-tank guns. He firmly believed that the era of great sweeping panzer drives was over, and that the Wehrmacht must adapt to a defensive posture. Rommel envisioned a radical reorganization of the German Infantry Division. Historically, a standard first-wave German infantry division possessed exactly 75 towed anti-tank guns of mixed, often inadequate calibers on paper. In our alternative timeline, Hitler yields to Rommel's strategic logic, shifting German industrial focus from complex heavy tanks to the mass production of the highly effective 75mm PaK-40 anti-tank gun. Consequently, the paper strength of every German infantry division is increased to 200 heavy anti-tank guns. This industrial pivot creates a dense, impenetrable defensive shield across occupied Europe, turning every standard infantry formation into a formidable anti-tank fortress that does not rely on scarce tanks to destroy enemy armor, thereby preserving Germany's panzers strictly for concentrated, localized counterattacks. On the Eastern Front, the implementation of Rommel's high-density defensive doctrine completely alters the nature of the war. Historically, German forces in the east laid an estimated 15 to 20 million landmines across the vast Russian landscape, a number that proved insufficient to halt the deep, multi-directional armored spearheads of the Soviet Red Army during major offensives like Kursk or Operation Bagration. In this alternative scenario, German pioneer units and infantry divisions, backed by a fully mobilized wartime economy dedicated to defensive munitions, succeed in laying 10 times that historical number, sowing an astronomical 150 million to 200 million landmines across the Russian steppe. This creates deeply layered, highly complex minefields that Rommel had famously dubbed Devil's Gardens during his campaign in North Africa. When the Red Army launches its massive armored offensives, their tank columns are immediately funneled into dense, pre-sighted killing zones. Instead of encountering thin screens of infantry, the Soviet spearheads are shattered by the high-density minefields, which detonate thousands of tanks before they can even make visual contact with the primary German defensive lines. As Soviet sappers frantically attempt to clear paths under heavy fire, they are systematically pinned down by the 200 heavy 75mm PaK-40 anti-tank guns embedded within every German infantry division. The relentless, mass-produced defensive shield effectively grinds the Soviet armored machine to a complete bloody halt, turning the Eastern Front into a static war of attrition that bleeds the Red Army dry. A similar, devastating defensive transformation occurs on the Western Front along the Atlantic Wall. Historically, by the time the Allies launched the D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944, German forces had succeeded in laying between 5 million and 6.5 million landmines across northern France. While this was a significant obstacle, it fell drastically short of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's personal defensive objective. Believing that the Allied invasion had to be stopped completely at the water's edge, Rommel had aggressively lobbied for the placement of 50 million to 100 million mines along the French coastline and its immediate hinterlands. In this alternate timeline, with Hitler's full industrial backing and the diversion of resources away from heavy tank production, Rommel's ambitious target is fully met, and over 80 million landmines are planted along the Normandy and Pas-de-Calais beaches. When British, American, and Canadian landing craft hit the beaches of Normandy, they do not face a partially fortified coast, but an absolute mechanical death trap. High-density sea mines destroy landing craft in the surf, while the sandy beaches and coastal bluffs are so densely packed with anti-personnel and anti-tank mines that any forward movement by Allied infantry or armor triggers instantaneous, catastrophic explosions. Allied engineers and clearing teams, operating under intense, pre-sighted artillery and machine gun fire, are completely unable to carve paths through the dense mine barriers. The high-density Devil's Gardens effectively seal the beaches, trapping the Allied first wave on the shore and destroying their armor at the water's edge, preventing any possibility of a successful breakout. The dual implementation of Rommel's defensive doctrine on both the eastern and western fronts fundamentally reshapes the outcome of the Second World War. By replacing expensive, over-engineered heavy tanks with hundreds of thousands of mass-produced, easily concealed anti-tank guns and hundreds of millions of landmines, the Wehrmacht successfully neutralizes the primary offensive weapon of its enemies, armored mobility. On the Western Front, the total failure of the D-Day landings due to the impenetrable, mine-choked beaches of Normandy forces the Allies to withdraw their battered forces back to Great Britain, dealing an almost fatal blow to Anglo-American military morale and delaying any future cross-channel invasion attempts by several years. Meanwhile, in the east, the Red Army's offensive momentum is completely shattered against the defensive bulwark of the 200 million mines and the high-density PaK-40 anti-tank shields. The war in Europe, once characterized by rapid, sweeping armored maneuvers, degenerates into a grueling static deadlock reminiscent of the Western Front of the First World War. Realizing that further offensive actions will result in millions of additional casualties with no prospect of a decisive military breakthrough, both the Soviet Union and the Western Allies are forced to abandon their demands for unconditional surrender. By late 1944, the warring powers are compelled to enter into agonizing peace negotiations, leading to a negotiated armistice that leaves a heavily fortified, defensive German Reich holding its pre-war borders, proving that Rommel's pragmatic, logistics-based Panzer shield was the single most effective strategy Germany could have deployed to survive the overwhelming industrial weight of the Allied coalition.